Good morning, everybody. So, welcome to the third day's first session. Actually, Mr. Sadavdani Ganesh has to give the first lecture, but you know, Bangalore traffic. So, he just informed us that he will take some more time to reach. So, Professor Bindu is starting the session. So, Professor Bindu M. Kutty is a professor at Department of Neurophysiology, National Institute of Mental Health and Neuroscience. Additionally, she is an adjunct faculty at NIAS. And she is going to talk about brain, cognitive reserve, and neural basis of consciousness.
A very good morning to you all, and welcome to my talk. I take this opportunity to thank the organizers of the conference for the privilege given to be here and to deliver this talk. So today my talk is based on the brain plasticity, cognitive reserve, and neural basis of consciousness. So we try to understand the intrinsic properties of the brain, especially the phenomenon of plasticity, the cognitive reserve, from the perspective of meditation studies that we have undertaken for the last 15 years. So I will be precisely mentioning what kind of studies going on in the department. So meditation, there are various definitions about the conceptualization of the meditation. These are the two definitions which I feel apt to my talk. So meditative techniques are intense sensory, emotional, and cognitive experiences that helps enhancing the internalized attention, heighten awareness, bring mental processes under greater control, and come out with emotionally positive experience. And if you look at the research studies on meditation, especially on brain functions, in early 1960s, little is known about the plasticity mechanism as well as the impact of meditation on brain functions. We didn't have much information. So it was Professor B.K. Anand and his research team from the Department of Physiology, All India Institute of Medical Sciences. They have recorded for the first time and observed enhanced alpha frequency waves. So these alpha frequency waves are the brain waves, 8 to 12 hertz brain waves. You can see that these bigger waves, 8 to 12 hertz frequency waves, that is superimposed on the background EEG. So there is enhanced alpha frequency following meditation, associated with meditation. And later studies by Robert Keith Wallace and Fred Travis and their colleagues, they have carried out extensively on research studies on transcendental meditation. And they have also found that meditative processes are associated with enhanced theta alpha power and also enhanced synchrony and coherence, that is, enhanced brain oscillations. So meditative processes induce brain oscillations, and both interhemispheric as well as intrahemispheric oscillations. And these brain oscillations are very helpful to integrate the brain functions. So when the whole brain is integrated, one is very happy and with less stress. So that is the whole idea behind the meditation. And as you know, that meditative technique helps in bringing a harmony between brain and mind. And subsequently, there are a lot of studies to understand the role of meditation or the effect of meditation on brain functions. Especially, there are many studies which reported enhanced synchronized oscillations, various EEG frequency oscillations like theta gamma oscillation, alpha beta gamma oscillations, and so on. So the studies ultimately showed that the simultaneous enhancement of alpha beta gamma oscillations would induce a unified cognitive experience. So that is an indication of, again, the integrated brain functions leading to the emergence of emotionally positive attitude. And later studies also, we have examples to show that meditative practices also bring some physical changes in the structure of the brain. So brain plasticity, when we talk about brain plasticity, it is the ability of the neural circuit to undergo changes. The brain has the capacity to reorganize its connections as a result of experience. So here now we can consider meditation is one of the best tool to understand the experience dependent plasticity. So in one way, like you can look at the brain functions as such, as I have mentioned, the brain oscillations. And the second way, you can look at the structural changes. So these studies, for example, this study has come out published in 2005. So they have observed through MRI studies that enhanced cortical thickness. Meditative practices enhance cortical thickness. And this, it is not that it enhances indiscriminately, the cortical thickness. It enhances meditative processes, enhance the areas which are associated with attention, interoception, sensory processing. So it is not an indiscriminate way of increasing the volume of the brain. It is only those areas which are concerned with cognitive functions. Similarly, studies have also shown meditative practices enhance the fiber integrity, the fiber tract integrity. So it is the fiber tract that connects the various areas, especially of the anterior cingulate cortex. So anterior cingulate cortex, so there is enhanced activity of the anterior cingulate cortex, and this is again important for mediating various attention processes as well as self-regulation. So you can see that overall meditative processes enhances various attention and cognitive mechanisms. And in general, thus you can see that meditative processes, especially the short-term meditative processes, through various inducing, various neuroplasticity events, especially enhancing chronic coherence, and various other plasticity events associated with the autonomic functions. The behavioral outcome is it promotes relaxation, positive effect, and reduces anxiety, stress, improve attention and cognition. So you can see that this is the immediate effect of meditative processes, short-term meditative processes. So those who are practicing meditation, especially even within 1 or 2 years, you can see that, or even 6 months, you can see some effect of meditation. But when you think about, the long-term practitioners of meditation, what happens? You can see that there is these meditative practices, induce a total transformation of individual consciousness from a self-centeredness to selfless nature. For example, so you can even look at the various higher mental attributes, you can study the heightened sense of well-being, cultivation of altruistic behavior, personal growth, environmental mastery. So you see that a long-term practice of meditation totally change your, individuality. And so how? What could be the processes through which the meditative techniques help achieving these higher mental attributes, mental states? So we, through our studies, we propose that, it is mainly the through plasticity mechanism as well as enhancing the various cognitive reserve capacities of the brain. It is not our proposal, but we also support this, that maybe, through cognitive reserve capacities of the brain, one can achieve various higher mental aspects that can be observed through your behavior. So what is cognitive reserve? That is the capacity of the brain to efficiently utilize the existing neural network or recruit alternative network when required to enhance the cognitive abilities. And another important ability is the anatomical variability at the level of networks. So that means the brain can change its, the property of the neural network can be changed through meditative processes. And that results in, you would have heard the term qualia actually. You can see the sensory experience will be qualitatively different. So the same neural pathways are now, processing the information in a different way. And with that, you are able to experience various aspects of well-being. So with this background, I thought I will just share with you some of the results that we have obtained from our studies. So mainly understanding the meditative mind, we have used various approaches to look at the brain plasticity associated with the meditation from a sleeping brain perspective. That is, the neuroplasticity of sleep, what happens during sleeping. And sleeping brain, like studying sleeping, the brain activities have various advantages. That is, some of the confounding factors of the wake active brains, like, attention, cognition, all these are, are very highly reduced during sleep. So you can study the various brain activities exclusively associated with the sleep. And also, meditation, how meditative processes enhance the cognitive capacities, and later how that you can relate to the well-being, psychological aspects of well-being by studying the neural functions. And mainly I'll be talking about our studies on Vipassana meditation. This is one of the ancient Buddhist meditative technique, and they use the technique of mindfulness meditation. But later on, we have also started studying about the Raja Yoga meditation. So in my talk, mainly I will be talking only about the Vipassana, but Raja Yoga, especially about the well-being, I will be mentioning about these studies. So now looking at the sleep architecture. So when you record your whole night sleep, you get an architecture, you get a graph like this. We call this as the hypnogram or the sleep architecture. And the sleep architecture has got a very stable morphology. And so we were wondering actually how the stable morphology, how meditative techniques, influence the morphology of the of sleep. So these are examples, like this is recorded from a senior Vipassana meditator, and this is one of the age-matched control subject. So we have observed distinct changes in the sleep architecture itself among the senior meditators. So we have started our studies with the senior meditators who have got a meditation proficiency of 5 years of meditation proficiency. They have undergone various advanced courses, and they are also regular practitioners of meditation. Daily, maybe they are spending around 2 to 3 hours per day. And we have compared that with the age-matched healthy control subjects as well as the novices. So novices are the beginners, beginners of meditation. They have got an experience of less than 2 years of meditative experience, and also they would have undergone only some basic course, like basic courses in Vipassana meditation. So we wanted to study two aspects. One is, what is the influence of meditation on sleep per se, and what is the influence of meditation proficiency on sleep. What we have observed from the sleep architecture studies is that whole night polysomnography study, we observed that there are certain changes displayed by the senior meditation practitioners. That is, mainly they have showed significant enhancement of slow wave sleep state as well as REM sleep state. So these sleeps are very important for bringing restorative, they have got restorative properties. So these are very important, and sleep is important for, for the synthesis of various protein. Like you can see that it carries out various restorative activities that is very important to carry out very efficiently the waking state. So sleep is important. And also we have observed reduced intermittent awakenings. So intermittent awakenings usually interrupt the sleep. So what we have observed is these meditative processes enhance the sleep continuity and sleep maintenance. So these are the major observations what we have observed. And also we have observed that the senior meditators, when we have looked at the EEG power spectra, and the topographical EEG power spectra, we have observed an enhanced theta alpha power, that is around 6 to 10 hertz power among the senior meditators. So this is another observation. This I will be talking in my subsequent talks also. So Vipassana meditation, especially senior meditators, we have observed some distinct changes in the sleep architecture as well as enhanced power theta at the theta alpha range. And we have also looked at the REM sleep state a little more, the characteristics of the REM sleep state, and observed that meditation practice enhance REM density, some of the some of the various aspects of meditation we have, REM sleep we have studied, especially REM density and the rapid eye movement activity patterns. And so these observations, for example, enhanced REM rapid eye movements are associated with enhanced plasticity mechanisms. And also enhanced REM density, there are studies to show that enhanced REM density is correlated with lucid dreaming, even though we haven't studied it. So these are all the changes what we have observed are correlated with some of the plasticity events associated with meditation practices, Vipassana meditation practice. And when we have started, we have initiated these sleep studies in 2000, and when we have, there aren't much studies on sleep, much studies on influence of meditation on sleep. Only we could see only one study. They also reported almost similar, or we have reported almost similar results what they have obtained, that is enhanced theta alpha and delta power, decrease EMG activity, enhanced low wave sleep, enhanced REM sleep density. So this group, the TM group, they have correlated, they have emphasized that these are the electrophysiological or the behavioral correlates of stabilized and evolved higher mental states. So these are achieved, these can be achieved only through intense meditative practices. And enhanced theta alpha activity also have been correlated with the sustained attention, emotional processing, feeling of happiness, enhanced parasympathetic activity. This enhanced parasympathetic activity takes care of the metabolic, hypermetabolic state with a proper cardiovascular functions, and enhanced self-regulation and subjective well-being. So you can see that, so these could be the indices, the enhanced alpha theta could be an index of the changes that is happening in the body. Then we have moved from the sleep studies. We wanted to see whether these enhanced alpha theta are associated with or a trait effect of meditation, whether this can also be studied from the waking consciousness point of view. So we have just studied the EEG pattern during meditation, during various states of mind, like during rest, during breath awareness, during meditation itself, during Vipassana itself, and during even loving kindness, metta. So what we have observed, you can see that these are the EEG records, and with, you can see an enhanced EEG oscillations in the low frequency range in the senior meditators. So here I mentioned the senior meditators means the seniors and the teachers. They are all advanced meditators. So we have observed this enhanced EEG oscillation associated with the meditation, associated with even rest among the senior practitioners. And if you look at the power spectra, what we have observed is this is during the breath awareness among the seniors and the teachers when compared to the novice group. And this is the basal rest level. Even at the basal rest level, you can see enhanced, theta alpha, between around 6 to 10 hertz, even at the base level. That is what. So there is a kind of trait effect setting in. And during observing the breath also, there is enhanced amplitude of alpha at the range of 6 to 10, but especially around the lower alpha, that is around 8 to 10 hertz. And these are the power spectra. And you can see the significant differences in the enhancement of the theta alpha, especially the 8 to 10 hertz frequency among these meditators and compared to the novice meditators. And the same continued. We have observed the same trend. These are the examples from the, while meditating, from the Vipassana time, like when the practitioners are meditating the Vipassana technique, you can see that this is associated with enhanced amplitude of at the lower frequency range, that is around 6 to 10 hertz, or especially 8 to 10 hertz when compared to the baseline. The same we have observed the 6 to 8 hertz and the 8 to 10 hertz enhancement among the advanced practitioners when compared to the novice group. Thus, we have observed enhanced theta alpha power across all states, all mental states, during rest, during breath awareness, during meditation, during metta I didn't see. So as a kind of trait effect among the advanced practitioners of meditation. And again, so these can be again, so these are indices of achieving various behavioral outcome. That these are indices of sustained attention, emotional processing, well-being, achieving well-being state, and so on. So again, we have observed, so enhanced theta alpha is a trait effect that can be seen during waking conscious state, that is during rest, during meditation, even during sleep state. So now from there we moved to understand the cognitive studies, the cognitive potentials. So here what we have done, we have studied the P300 waves. So P300 wave pattern, this wave are the positive waves that you can record at around 300 millisecond from the onset of the stimulus. So these are associated with the cognitive task. So the subjects are asked to carry out some cognitive task, and these are, so these, the potentials are indices of your cognitive abilities. For example, this tells about the sustained attention, the working memory processing, and so on. So various aspects of attention and cognition can be studied by looking at the P300 amplitude. So in this case, we didn't see much differences across groups, like whether the advanced or the novice meditators. But when we looked at the EEG studies, EEG dynamics, time locked with the occurrence of the peak of the P300 waves, that is from between 200 to 600. When we looked at the the EEG dynamics, we have observed certain very dynamic change associated with the task performance. So when you are indulging in internal activities, internal meditative activities, you can see that there is enhanced theta alpha power, enhanced theta alpha oscillations. But when the attention is diverted from internal attention to an external attention to carry out a task, a cognitive task, what we have observed is there is an enhanced desynchrony of these oscillations, especially at the, at the 8 to 10 hertz, that is the lower alpha range, as well as at the beta range. So these changes, associated with the behaviors are very interesting. So like what, you can see that there is something, we can relate that to the cognitive reserve capacities. You are tuning, this is called as cortical tuning mechanisms. In cortical tuning, see, I will just come to that. So normally during, brain processing, you can see that the long range theta frequency oscillations, which activate and as well as integrate various brain regions. So these theta activations actually activate the regions which are kept apart, which are situated at longer distances. You can see that they integrate all these functions. So theta activity is very important to integrate the brain functions. But when you are in a meditative state, for example, there is something that is happening in the cortex. We call it as a cortical tuning. So during cortical tuning, what is happening, for example, as I mentioned, when there is an enhanced alpha frequency, especially at the lower range of alpha, that is 8 to 10 hertz. So this is an indication, this is a gating mechanism, indication to say that these, that now the cortex is indulged in internal attention processing mechanism associated with the meditation. So when the meditator is internally focusing his attention to the sensory processes, that is ongoing processes, there is an information, the cortical activity gives an information that there is enhanced alpha activity, and this is, we can call it as alpha gating. And this this enhanced high amplitude alpha oscillation associated with inhibition and disengagement of task irrelevant cortical areas. So that means when the cortex is now involved in meditative processes, you can see there is enhanced alpha activity. Now when your attention is diverted to carry out an external task, a cognitive task, this will be reduced. The alpha is reduced, and the other activities, other brain oscillatory mechanism take over the function to carry out the cognitive. So you see the nuances of the cortical activities that can be changed, that can be bring under control to carry out various mental functions. So this is this is from our study. So almost similar explanation has been given by Railkhan and Polic. So Railkhan and his group, Polic and his group especially, they have carried out a lot of study, contributed a lot of study to understand the neural correlates of Vipassana meditation. So this is another example just to show this kind of cortical tuning. For example, in this case, they have studied the P300 amplitude by giving various stimuli like oddball stimuli, the standard stimuli, and the distractor stimuli. So here, usually when you are asked to concentrate only on the oddball stimuli, you get, you are concentrating only on that oddball or the specific stimuli, and accordingly your attention is diverted to notice that stimuli actually. So accordingly, according to the amplitude, the P300 amplitude depends upon the sustained attention activities and the working memory aspects of the cognition. Whereas here, when the distractor stimuli come, the meditator, you see the amplitude is highly reduced in the meditators. And also there is almost reduced gamma activity. Whereas in normal controls, you can see there is enhanced gamma activity. So that means the cortex is, processing the information, whether it is that is required for that particular task. Whereas here, you see that they have the ability to disengage from the unwanted and irrelevant stimuli that affect the attention and cognition processes. So these are the various aspects of cortical tuning. We we relate that as a mechanism of or an example of cognitive reserve capacity. So in summary, what we have observed, distinct sleep architecture, and this is very important to establish a proper sleep organization. So meditation practice enhance sleep organization, enhance theta power across all state among advanced practitioners of Vipassana, and enhance cortical tuning associated with meditation, alpha desynchrony associated with the cognitive performances. And from there we thought, okay, these advanced practitioners, they have showed certain trait effects, certain enhanced cognitive abilities. So what about their mental activities, mental attributes associated with the enhanced meditative or meditative proficiency? So we have looked at the well-being from the Buddhist perspective, among almost, we have used a study with a large number of meditators, 110 senior practitioners and 107 novices. And we have observed there is a correlation between the meditation proficiency with the development of wholesome qualities and reduction of unwholesome qualities. So the questionnaires are made accordingly, and we have observed that this meditation proficiency enhances the wholesome qualities and reduces the unwholesome qualities in these meditation practitioners. Now, we have also studied well-being from a Western perspective of Western psychological perspective. And this is a large cohort study we have carried out using almost 1,000 participants. This is to understand mainly about the Raja Yoga proficiency. We have also almost similar, like you can see that the meditation proficiency is correlated with the progress in well-being. So these are some of the empirical evidences we got to understand the brain mechanisms associated with plasticity and with cognitive reserve capacity. So, in a nutshell, we can say that meditative experience condition brain functions in different ways and at different levels. And with all these enhanced plasticity and cognitive reserve capacities, I feel that the conscious experience of the meditator will be totally different from that of a normal. Like, all of us experience basic consciousness, and at times we are able to appreciate the content of consciousness. Whereas meditative practitioners, with their very specific conscious experience, may be able to achieve this metaconsciousness state in a much better and a stable way than anybody else. I think I'll stop my talk with this, and these are my students, past and present. But I have talked only a very little part of the study from the studies carried out by Dr. Sulekha, Dr. Ravindra, Dr. Nirmala, Ajay, Mr. Ajay, Dr. Jyoti, and currently Ajay and Jyoti are with me, plus Gulshan, Rahul, and Anaka are also carrying out meditation studies. Arun is, see, the theme, our theme is we are interested to understand the consciousness from an illness to wellness spectrum. So here I have given only the wellness spectrum, like the brain activities associated with the meditation. Whereas from the illness point of view, Dr. Arun is studying various aspects of dysfunctional thalamocortical mechanisms associated with schizophrenia. The other students are involved in various studies concerned with animal models. And my research collaborators are all of them. John P. John, you would have heard him yesterday. Seema is a positive psychologist. Ravindra Pant, he is the director of Nalananda Mahavihara University, because we are trying to understand the Buddhist philosophy from the empirical evidence, what we got it from our studies. Sangeeta Menon and Binoy from NIAS, and funded by various other funding agencies. I also thank the participants of the study, and thank you all for your kind attention.
Thank you, ma'am, for a very great talk and finishing it before the time allotted. So you saved 5 minutes. So our next speaker is Sri Shadavdani Ganesh. So I welcome him to the dais. He is the Honorary Director of Kulapati K. M. Munshi Center for the Art Appreciation, Bharatiya Vidya Bhavan, Bangalore, India.
Very good morning. Sorry for the delay in my arrival. The topic is very exciting, at least for me. But many of you here, well versed in so many other sciences and other soft sciences as well, may not be having an exposure to poetry as such, that to classical poetry. So I'm in a fix whether to speak completely about what I want to present or something directly connected more with consciousness. Though the topic is consciousness and culture, my topic essentially falls within the realm of culture. Culture, poetry is one sort of culture, and their poetic expression, how consciousness and emotions, they aid to expression, creative expression in art, especially the art of poesy. So I'm in rather fix. Please guide me, at least after a few minutes of presentation. If it is not within your world, pardon me and bear with me. And I'm very happy that eminent scholars like Dr. V.N. Jha and my friend Dr. R. Shankar, such people, they can really understand and appreciate what little I have been doing now. There are so many theories of consciousness and creativity, but I am speaking from the perspective of classical Indian aesthetics, verily rooted in the Natyashastra of Bharata and works of people like Anandavardhana, Abhinavagupta, Kuntaka, Mahimabhatta, Bhattanayaka, Bhattatauta, and others. There, Pratibha is the word used for imagination or creativity in a rough way. Though translations cannot be 100% right, only a vague, rough parallels I am drawing. Some popularly used words, they are not very precise. Pratibha literally means it is the flash which is occurring again and again, Pratibha. But such explanatory translations may not be of much use when I am talking to you. That's why I am using the general words Pratibha, means imagination or creativity, both. That is the seed of any art. And Bhattatauta, master of mentor of Abhinavagupta, who wrote the commentary on Natyashastra, and who was also a very great exponent of Pratibhijna Shaiva philosophy, Abhinavagupta. And his mentor Bhattatota says, Prajna Navanavollekha Shalini Pratibhamata Tadanu Pranana Jivat Varnana Nipunak Kavihi Smritir Vyatita Vishaya Matir Agami Gochara Buddhist Tatkaliki Jnaya Prajna Traikaliki Mata. Like that. There, Smriti, memory or Chitta, what we call, it is connected with the past. While Buddhi is of the temporary issues, contemporary issues, present tense, and Mati, anticipation, it is of the future tense. Prajna, or that consciousness, all pervading, and it transcends the past, present, and future, and ultimately embraces the present tense. It makes the present tense an infinite continuum. That is the import of Bhattatota. And such pratibha, and such prajna, such wisdom, such awareness, when it can see newer and newer things, Navanavon Meshashalini, when it can open out newer and newer vistas or avenues, then it becomes Pratibha. That consciousness which is interested in doing so many newer and newer things, trying to visualize newer and newer ways, that becomes Pratibha or imagination or genius or creativity or whatever. It means, generally, we know from the viewpoint of spiritual masters, yogis or jnanis or rishis or seers or whatever, they are supposed to have withdrawn from the world. Though they are great people, they have immense compassion, mudita, maitri, karuna, upeksha. These are the 4 great qualities which are needed according to Yoga Shastra and even according to the Buddhist scriptures as well. It is maitri, universal friendship, mudita, ever cheerfulness, and karuna, compassion or empathy, and then upeksha. It is a sort of indifference to the worldly things. They generally try to withdraw from the situations. But that becomes pure consciousness. When that indifference is not sought for, indifference only to differences are sought for, not to any other thing, then such a state will be a sort of active involvement without involvement. That is involving without involvement, something like a threshold effect where likes and dislikes, proposals and disposals are suspended, judgment is completely suspended, and only a compassionate observation is seen, then such a state becomes Pratibha. That is what the import of Bhattatota and other people who have written about that in the classical treatise of Sanskrit. And such a concept and such Pratibha or creativity, if it expresses in the form of sound and sense, it becomes poetry. If it expresses in the form of lines and color shades, it becomes painting. If it expresses in the three-dimensional form with color and with light and shadow, then it becomes sculpture. If it expresses in the form of movements and expressions of the body, then it becomes dance. And if it is expressing the form of tune and rhythm, that is Shruti and Laya, it becomes music. Like that. We can categorize accordingly. Now I am emphasizing more on poetry where I am well rooted. That sense, Pratibha is that way of involving without involvement. Generally in the world, what we see is completely expectations leading to raga and dvesha, likes and dislikes. No expectation, non-expectation, many times it may lead to indifference. Indifference and even being ignoring the world around. But here the observer and observer become one. But that is not the interested thing of an artist. An artist wants to know the world without being lost in the world. While a jnani or a jivan mukta or whosoever, he is not at all interested in the world. Not that he cares for nothing, but he is content in one's own self. But if an artist is taken care of, immediately he wants to observe the world as it is. But in our case, in the mundane sense, we want to see the world as we want to. Our colors, our preferences, they come. Our preferences, they try to color the world. But for an artist, supposed to have not colored the world. Supposed to. Nowadays, so many artists may also be coloring. Sanskrit aesthetics clearly says they are not artists. If once we involve with the world with a sense of expectations, trying to associate with things and dissociate with things with a sense of expectation, raga and dvesha, then it will be no more an art. then such a sense of creativity that can only lead to wonderful things, beautiful things of art. When that has not been accomplished, then it is no more art. And it's also said in our Shastras that emotions, when they are personalized, they are called bhavas, personal emotions. That's why one's personal emotions may not be liked by the others. But once when they are detached from the sense of personality, they become universal. This way of sublimating the emotions is the secret of rasa. Rasyante iti rasaha or rasanam rasaha. Rasa is the relishment. Rasa is the relishing of the emotions. All emotions in the mundane sense, they may not be relishable. Some people prefer some emotions. Some people will not. But in that sense of involving without involvement, in that sense of emotions being sublimated, every emotion will be relishable. That's why we have a classic case of an artist painting an old woman, a street side beggar, maybe a very beautiful painting. But at the same time, an artist painting Miss World or Miss Universe may not be beautiful. Because artist is not just catering to beautiful subject, it is beautiful creation. Subject beautiful may lead to an ugly creation. And subject beautiful may lead to a beautiful creation. And subject ugly may lead to ugly creation. And subject ugly may lead to beautiful creation. But here subject is immaterial, ultimately the creation, and that should be beautiful. And that's why Dhananjaya, in one of his verses, he comes out, Ramyam Jugupsita Mudar Mathapi Nicham Ugram Prasadi Gahanam Vikritancha Vastu Yadvapya Vastu Kavibhavaka Bhavyamanam Tannasti and Narasabhava Mopaiti Loke. It's not that this is loathsome, this is endearing, this is charming, and that is appealing, and this is tinsel, and that is sublime. Immaterial of the topic or the item what we have considered for description or narration or whatever, real art transcends the object of art. No doubt there is at a level relationship between the subject and the art, but pure art transcends that also. In that sense, art is not amoral, it is metamoral. Hiriyanna, a great philosopher of 20th century and also an aesthetician of high merit, he says, the purpose of art is to transcend all purposes, and art has no goal of morality. It may only have a view of morality, but it transcends that, and it bypasses logic. Art is layman's yoga for ultimate realization, bypassing logic. These are some of the words of Hiriyanna. What he really means is the classical import of Indian aesthetics. Accordingly, the world is always bothered by good and bad. But real art transcends that. It will not shun. At the same time, like the highly ethical people who are always working in black and white, it will not endorse their opinion as such. Here, this concept of transcending the material nature of the world, transcending the materialism of the object which an artist is going to explain, that reveals the secret of art. And interestingly, a parallel can be drawn from a very revolutionary poet of Telugu, Sri Sri, who is known for his radical views, was a Marxist also. He says, Kadedi Kavita Kanarham, Kukkapilla, Subbupilla, Patachukka, Artitokka. Nothing in this world can become unfit for an art creation. It may be a puppy, it may be a worn out shirt, it may be the peeled out banana, or what else. Anything, and even a piece of soap, everything can become vastu, that is the object of poetry. Here, transcending the materiality is very, very important. That is what that's what we see in Indian aesthetics also. But at the same time, to have a sizable creation, we need a sort of theme, a sort of events and all that. It's a separate discussion altogether. But what I want to say is, at that high level of equanimity, we transcend the good and bad in any material object. And from this view, if we see how art creation will be appealing, I want to show some of the examples taken from classical poetry. Apart from pratibha, that is imagination or creativity, an artist is expected to have vyutpatti, erudition in that particular art. Apart from that, you should have erudition of so many things. Not that this is unimportant. Everything is important. Natat shilpam, natat shastram, nasa vidya, nasa kala, naso yogo, natat karma, natyasmin yana drishyate, so says Bharata. In the field of art, he is choosing theatre. In theatre, for that matter, we can take film today. No science, no art, no yoga, no activity, nothing is outside the purview of theatre or film. So is the burden of the artist, and that's why Bhamaha, a 7th century Vedantin and also a Buddhist writing on Indian aesthetics, he says, Aho bharo mahan kavehe. How great is the burden of an artist who has to know so many things. Because the erudition come to a great help. It can become a wonderful tool and a handy tool to explain anything and everything. Till then, you will not be knowing how this particular information has contributed for this art. So, that is erudition, vyutpatti, and then abhyasa. Constant practice is very, very important. People who belong to classical music, dance, and such performing arts, even classical painting, we know how careful they are and how meticulous they are in drawing lines or practicing the same swara and same laya, same rhythm. All these things are very important, and so is the poet's faculty. Accordingly, Shakti, Vyutpatti, Abhyasa, that is imagination or creativity, erudition and practice, they are all three important features which aid to great art. Combination of all these three can alone make a classic or a wonderful classical piece. I shall take up one or two examples. Because of paucity of time, I am not dealing with all the examples, though I have culled out several examples, not only from Sanskrit, but also from Prakrit, Telugu, Kannada, and Tamil, which are few languages I know. One example from Bhartrahari's Niti Shataka, it's an allegory. There, a lion in its old age, can it graze grass? Can it live on that? No, it will not. That lion which used to kill an elephant in rut and enjoy its breakfast or meal or lunch or whatever, now in its old age, can it endorse, can it subscribe to grazing? No, it will not. The suggestion here is people who are in comforts, people who occupy high positions and enjoy the world well, can they compromise for something which is inferior in their times of penury? No, it's not possible. That is the suggestion. And this is called aprastuta prashamsa, a figure of speech. Means something is told and some other thing is intended. That is hitting at the target by looking at something else. So this is a genre of poetry itself in Sanskrit. There the verse goes like this. Kshutshamopi, jara krishopi, shithila prayopi, kashtam dasham apannopi, vipanna didhitirapi, praneshu munchatsopi, matte bhendra vibhinna kumbhabhishita grasaika bhaddaspraha, kim jirnam tranamatti manamahatam agre sarakkesari. Just the auditory imagination you can feel. T.S. Eliot, in one of his writings, he says about auditory imagination, even before understanding how the sound of poetry itself conveys so many things. Here, api means in spite of. He has used 6 times api, kshutsha mopi, even when it is haunted by hunger. Kshutsha mopi, jara krishopi, even when it is lean and old. Shithila prayopi, when it is in such a fragile condition. Kshutsha mopi, jara krishopi, shithila prayopi, kashtam dasham apannopi, even when it is subjected to all sorts of difficulties and calamities. Kashtam dasham apannopi, vipanna didhitirapi, even when it has lost its mind and mental balance. Vipanna didhitirapi, praneshu munchatswapi, even at the verge of leaving its body. Praneshu munchatswapi. These are the 6 conditions. In spite of all these adversaries, in all such difficulties, api, there, all these words are not compounded. Kshutkshamaha api, jara krishaha api, shitila prayaha api, kashtam, dasham, apannaha api, vipanna didhitiri api, praneshu munchatsu api. All are fragile words. all are shattered words, all are asamasta padas, uncompounded words. This is the situation of that lion. The lion now in penury, lion now in old age, this is what it is. And so its fragility and its shattered mind and body, all this is indicated in this hazy verbal structure. How was it earlier? It's one compounded sentence, one word, one phrase, completely occupying the third line. Matte bhendra vibhinna kumbhapishita grasaika baddhaspraha. So well intact, perfect and strong and valiant it was. Kim jeernam tranamatti, the conclusive line. What? Will it go for grass? Manamahatam agresara kesari. And Manamahatam, he is best among the people of self-righteousness and pride. Agresaraha kesari, and it is kesari, a lion. There are hundreds of synonyms used for lion, but it is kesari, agresara, kesari, the alliterations you see. When we are uttering the alphabets, sounds when we are producing e, u, they go flat. A. That's why when somebody is at a distance, hey, come here, like that we call him. Not e, come here, a, come here, u, come here. No, a. So that a is a rising voice. Such was it. It's having such a heralding personality, and that has become so poor. In spite of that, can it compromise? This simple meaning has been so well articulated, I'm unable to go to the details. Here, all the concepts of guna, riti, vakrata, alankara, anumana, dhvani, all sorts of shades of dhvani and rasa, everything is put together. It's an amalgamation of all these things. So, in classical expression, the form and content's inseparability is profoundly experienced. Then only we'll be having the best of the world there. In the world, generally, we have mismatches. But in the world of art, everything is well matched. And that's why this way of best matching of form and content is the product of creativity. To take one more example from Panditaraja Jagannatha, he is explaining the beauty of a damsel. She is on the banks of a small lake. She is next to the lake. And she is very cheerful and smiling. And there are beautiful lotuses which have bloomed in the pond. And the bees, which are unable to find where the exact lotus is, where the real lotus is. Tire tarunya vadanam sahasam, nire sarojasya miladvikasam, alokya dhavatyubhayatra mugdha, maranda lubdha likishoramala. Very simple verse. The poet's intent is just this much. Her face is as beautiful as the early morning lotus, well-bloomed lotus. Tire tarunya vadanam sahasam. On the shore, on the banks, her face is smiling. Tire tarunya vadanam sahasam. Nire sarojasya miladvikasam. In the waters, we have the blooming flowers, lotuses. They're so well blooming. And you look at the similarity of sound. Tire, nire, vikasam, sahasam. Tarunya vadanam, sarojam, miladvikasam. By similar sounds, without even going to the level of meaning, we have just by the sound itself, there is similarity that poet is suggesting. Alokya dhavatyubhayatra mugdha. The innocent bee, the bees which are innocent, because they are young. Ali kishoramala. If they are old, grown up, they will be knowing. Grown up people, they have so many reservations for likes and dislikes, and they will not be enamored easily. We need a sort of innocence in appreciating art. Then only we can become good connoisseurs. And Ali Kishora, that is the suggestion. And Kishora means you can just see. It is called Jagana. One Laghu, one Guru, and again another Laghu. Ta dhim ta. Na na na. Kishora. Kishora means you feel a sort of jump. That is called Pluti in Sanskrit. Kishora means an adolescent, a boy, a youthful person, just bumbling with all excitement, jumping jack he is. And that is what being suggested here. Maranda lubdhali kishoramala, as it is laden with the deep sense of longing for the nectar, it is unable to recognize the reality. and unreal. And that's why alokya dhavatyubhayatra mugdha maranda lubdha likishora mala. Means it's unable to go here to the lotus real or to her face which is as good as the lotus. This confusion, it is called Bhrantimad Alankara. It's a figure of speech arising out of confusion. But this confusion is not for the poet, not even for the connoisseurs. It is for the bees, and that's why we can enjoy. This way of isolating ourselves from the situation and enjoying the beauty of situation, not at the cost of somebody. All these things, it's not sympathy, it is empathy. It's not indifference and not even difference. It is a meta-different state. Such is the wonder of creativity. And then one verse from Telugu literature, the Adikavi Nannaya. He explains one story where the heroine will be thrown to, or rather she is virtually ditched in a small pond or a well, Devayani, and the hero comes and lifts her. Very typical filmy situation. And there, how he lifted. Jaladhi vilola vichi vilasatkala kanchi samanchitavani talavahanakshamam bayina dakshina hastamunan tadumnamad galaduru gharmavari kanakam rakarabjamu patti nutilo veluvada komalindigiche vishruta kirtiya yati prititon. Why I am singing it? Just to feel the language. Jaladhi vilola vichi vilasatkala kanchi samanchitavani talavahanakshamam bayina. One compound. This hero is capable of ruling the whole world in one hand, and he is giving his hand, helping hand. Galaduru Gharmavari Kanakambra. And that heroine, with all coyishness, Lajja, she is stretching her hand, which is sweating. She is in an awkward situation. At the same time, some handsome person has come for her help. That happiness is also there. She is already in love with him. So she is stretching her hand with all hope. And then it is sweating. And hers is Kara. And here his is Hasta. We know Hasta, what is the sound effect? And Kara, so tender is Kara. And Hasta, Ha, it needs lot of effort to pronounce. All such things. Here is his hand which can rule the three worlds. Here is the tender hand which is already sweating. Means this is Vishama Alankara and yet it is Sama Alankara. Very good match. Simply speaking, it is Vishama odd. But this oddness itself is a wonderful match for the marriage. Such things are wonderfully suggested, and this is how the craftsmanship of a creative artist goes when his imagination, because we have seen so many times the girls stretching their hands and boys helping and vice versa, and so many things are going on, but we ignore. Will not be going to the details. Such is the beauty of creation. And then one example from Kannada I shall show, and with that I shall conclude. One elephant in war. A warring elephant moves its trunk. How courageously and a heroic way it moves. Poet describes that. The great poet of Kannada, Kumarvyasa of 15th century says, Ardudo parabalavakalan horadudo maranana mantrava baradudo bavarakke balugaigalanu kainegehi karedudo balavella neerali neredudo marbalada veeraru haredudo danivilladantiya samara saurambha. By moving its trunk in a fierce manner, it is as though pounding the whole, crushing the whole army. And by oscillating its trunk, as though it is giving assurance to the god of death. Kalana Horadudo, Maranana Mantrava Baradudo, when it is oscillating the trunk, is it writing the magical spells of death? Because we know in our tradition that by uttering some mantras or by writing some of the magical spells, we will be destroying people whom we intend to kill and such things. Is it is writing that? All these things are Hetut Preksha Alankaras, or even Sasandeha we can as well make. And then, is it is calling, inviting the heroes of the war to fight with the elephant? Balavella Neerali Beradudo. And is it is pushing all these is it is drowning all these opposite army to waters of shame? Veerara Heradudo. is it is shaving the heads of all the warriors, shaving the mush of all the warriors. Haradudo, Danivilla Dantiya Samara Saurambha. Just stop. When a trunk in action is coming in front of us, can we do all these things? No. Only when we are detached, then we can do. Means coming out of the situation generally makes us indifferent to it. When we are within the situation, we are overwhelmed or we'll be losing heart. Within and beyond, this is what the wonderful aspect of creativity, and what I honestly feel is to know creativity, to know pratibha, to know consciousness. It's rather easier to know the activity of it, the product of it. As a great Kannada poet and philosopher DVG says, Vishwanubhavave Vishwatmanubhavake Patha. Realizing the world is the better way to realize the world beyond. So realizing the work of art and enjoying it is a better way to appreciate and understand the concept of creativity. Thank you.
Thank you, sir. Thank you very much for thank you, Dr. Shadavdani Ganesh, for making a colorful and bright presentation with only words. So now let's break for the tea, and we will reassemble at 11:20. Thank you.